Hi, I'm Randall. I'm here with my teammates, Joseph and Joshua. And we built for Rex here an application that would compile event data from multiple sources and scrape it into one location that would allow Rex to be able to easily search and filter many of these events. Uh, to start with, I'm going to have Joshua, if you want to talk about more kind of the use cases and why we want to have this application.
Well, cool. Yeah. So the main problem that Rex was dealing with was that there was a lot of different events that his team attended, but the issue was that a lot of these places were on different websites, different organizations hosting these events. So going to all these different websites, organizing all the events, putting them on a calendar, goal is that we were going to scrape event information from a variety of sources, compile it into one location, so either a database or a file or something like that. And then we are going to display all the events in a readable, easy to access calendar. So a calendar view that is very easy to access, very easy to look through, as well as being able to apply searching, filtering onto that calendar to search for specific events. And then lastly, being able to view more details about the event and then export that event to an Outlook calendar so that our client could actually organize it with the rest of his events. And then Joseph here is going to take over the non-functional aspect of our requirements.
Yeah, so when approaching this program for its use, we had to keep in mind a couple things. First off, pretty obvious, it has to be intuitive to use. It needs to be easier or as easy as possible to use this application because its purpose is to reduce the overhead, reduce the inconvenience of going through a bunch of different websites. So it was very high on our non-functional requirement priority list. The next one, because Brex is in the military, to be able to use this application, it can't be a download and it has to be through an approved website. Um, for our web, for our program, we've made it accessible through a website, and we have a way to set it up to whatever hosting service would be easiest for Brex to access while it in on military networks. So that's that use case. And then performance. The web scrapers move pretty efficiently, pretty fast. So that's that use case. And lastly was the minimal integrating friction. So it shouldn't take too long to or be too complicated to actually use the program. And I think we've done that pretty well. It's a pretty smooth process. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So I think now we're ready for Rex to begin the client demo to be able to use the application and compare that against the functional requirements that we had set out.
All right, yeah, I can do that. Okay, so I'm working from a link that you guys provided. So you're hosting it right now, looks like on AWS.
Yep.
I do have access to that, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. And you'll see the entire screen pop up here in a second. Should see that. And it takes me right to the page and pops up with a calendar view. So, first of all, calendar system. So it does have a calendar, displays the various events. So you can see those events on there right now. It's looking pretty good, pretty easy to read through. So we're on today. If we go next, it'll go to the next month. Easy to navigate. And then it's like, oh, wow. So it looks like on the 1st of May, we've got a bunch of stuff going on. So easy to kind of then go in and see everything that's there. This one is actually pretty cool. So this is mine. So we're doing this one specifically, this catastrophic communications challenge. Ensign just published this one. We're hosting this from the Washington Air National Guard, and that's actually pretty cool. So for me to be able to see my event showing up on the calendar is actually pretty cool. I just noticed that today. So very cool. So that's the first one, information. So Display the event and all the information associated with it. So yeah, so that's what we're looking at here on the right-hand side. So we double click the actual calendar event and we can see so Unson's hosting it. It is on the 1st. They don't have the actual times posted on their website. I know because I just looked at it and it is free. They don't have the location published yet either based on their website, but you can go to the actual event here. So let's open that up and have a look at it real quick. That's an Ensign problem. So
Is he missing a W?
oh, it is missing. Yeah, that's weird.
Oh,
Let's go check it out. There it is. Okay. So we've got, there's me, Air National Guard, catastrophic communications. The images validate, like you guys scraped as much as possible. So here's the actual pitch event. And yeah, very easy. That's sweet. And then we have a calendar link. So let's do open link in new tab.
And then the NA there usually holds a description, but if the website that we're scraping from doesn't provide a description, it can be sometimes just placed as a default, not assigned.
Yeah, but we're able to go to the actual website to find all that information pretty quick and easy. So this was me clicking on the event. So we've got the event itself, schedules for the 1st of May. And it looks like since there was no time actually in the link itself, we've got something there that we can probably just go. It's actually from 9 to noon. And we know this is Ensign challenge. All right, now it's on my calendar. So there we go.
boom.
Cool. All right. So that's like the first one. And then the search system. Okay, so let's check that out too. So let's go back and we'll just go back to the month. We know that one was hidden, so let's close it. Let's do challenge. It's right there. Okay, so that's popping up. And there's other ones too. So this must be another Ensign one. Yep. So multi-domain range scheduling. Okay. And then let's select the host, Ensign. Okay, so that still works. Let's get rid of challenge. So that was the search. Now let's do just filter. So let's clear the filter and just search on or filter on Ensign. Okay, sweet. Yeah. All that looks good. Let's just do innovation. How many people are saying they do innovation? A lot of people, it looks like.
Most
Maybe Sibbers don't happen very often. Let's see. Oh, okay. So there we go. Okay, sweet. So this one has specific times. It's a 2-day event. Here's your description like you talked about. And then we've got, let's open this up in a new tab. Goes right to the Navy Supersetter kind of connect event. That's cool. And then if we create a calendar link, see how that processes on the time. Oh yeah, sweet. So you actually put the description in there. And again, because it's a multi-day event, it doesn't look like it's handling that. But we can easily manipulate that through here. Okay, sweet. All right, so that's the search and filter. And then, oh, we got a cost. So in dollar amounts.
Yeah. So far, I believe every event is free, so I don't think there's any events that have any cost related to them.
Fair enough.
So far, at least, from
Zero.
what we've scraped.
Okay.
But since it's currently set as NA instead of 0, it's doesn't show for that one specifically. But that's a small, like 5-minute fix.
Well, and then it filter like, yeah, if you don't select anything or you remove the filter, it gives you the cost. And then location. Let's look at anything in Seattle. No, let's do Washington. Ooh, Mount Vernon. Oh, that's in DC still.
Lots of stuff in DC.
Yeah. There we go. There's a virtual event. That one's going to be probably, there we go. So it actually has to verify it. So virtual event, open topic. Sweet. Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. So we validated that one, the search. So we have the search and filtering built in there. Nice. The next one's a web scraper. I think that one's a little bit more technical, kind of in the back end. But if we go back and kind of validate what we're doing here. So in this case, here's one of the events, right? So you guys went to, I'm assuming, we had the Navy, one of the websites you went to was like probably Navy Innovation or Navy Cyber Sitters or something to that effect.
Yeah,
And
and
this was one of the events, yeah, that they had on there. And so, let's see. Do you remember off the top of your head what it was?
it was, if you look up like Navy SBIR events, you should probably find it. Yeah, SBIR events, that one.
Okay. And there's one of the ones that we actually saw. We saw that seed tour. Yeah, so these are the ones that are then showing up. And these ones are in the past. So, okay.
Yeah, most
This
of
looks
those.
like the one, this is the one that we just pulled up, this one right here. So yeah, so you guys are actually taking and pulling, so you're scraping all the data off this web page and putting it into a format that allows it to then be published on the calendar itself.
Yep.
So, yep, very cool. Okay. So web scraper, different websites, because they're not all gonna be the same, right? I mean, we just looked at that one, it's not gonna be the same as all the other ones that are out there. And so it looks like as we add more and more and more, the web scraper would then be expanded from just the different websites that you would scrape. So I'm sure that's like, that would be, because they're all unique, like that would be additional work that would need to be done over time, right? As we identify new ones. But it sounds like, just based on our past conversations, that the pattern that you guys created to do that is pretty robust. So you're able to transfer that from back and forth across the team to be able to all kind of get a feel for how to build out on that scraper. So, that's, when we looked at the maintainability, which goes into the, the ility parts, the non-functional requirements. I think that you guys did a really good job of thinking through, how do you maintain this long term? A lot of it, readability of code, reusability of patterns and things like that. So I think that was all really good too. Sweet. So that's the web scraper, and then the parser does all of that. Obviously, we just validated that. We showed the event, and then we showed it on there. So you're doing the actual parsing into a meaningful object that is consumable through the front end. Which you guys built out. This is React, right? So Node.js. Sweet.
Yeah, it's all in React with TypeScript.
Which we talked about at the beginning. I think that was very adventurous for you guys to do that. I commend you. So, all right, the next one's the API. So connect application. This one was a higher priority. And that's just connecting the web scraper to the front end. So the ability to pull, right? So there are two different code bases, right, that you're using for the front end and the scraper. And so you have the ability to pass that data back and forth. So working on building that out. And that'll be something obviously long-term from a robust perspective, especially when a database actually gets implemented. And we talked about that, right? The database right now, based on the size of the data that we're using, is not tremendous. And by the way, the web scraper, because events come up and down all the time, I think it was a little bit more from a design perspective. I appreciate the approach you guys took with just doing the scraping, on a normal basis versus, potentially having to maintain a robust database that may or may not be needed. So I think that's one, future iterations of this could be evaluated whether or not a database was required. That also reduces obviously the data calls back and forth through an API, like a robust API to build out, which again, from a maintenance perspective, becomes pretty tricky too. So, sweet. Next one is the exporter. So we just looked at that, right? So it was the Outlook integration. So can I generate a calendar invite? We went through that. It was pretty easy, especially kind of based on the data that some of these websites have. And so, being able to bring up the calendar invite just from a click and then adding it to a calendar, that was something we initially talked about because I don't want to have to maintain, multiple calendars. And the whole point of if I find something that I want to do, as I go through the searches, and I pull that, I would just want to be able to prop it on my calendar so I don't have to keep going back and forth here. So something that's important to me, I put on my own calendar. If it's not important to me, it lives on this calendar for everybody else to use and figure out if it's important to them. So that looks good. And then looks like lastly, from the functional piece was the AWS integration. And this was obviously just so that, and it could be AWS, it could be anything, right? So, but we wanted it to be something that people could hit anywhere in the world. And so, where it's at right now, we didn't go like full bore into, the whole infrastructure piece, but you guys are able to like get it stood up on AWS so that I now, on the other side of the state of Washington, can pull it up and fully access all of the features. So, yep, completely hosted. I think this is local to, like, you guys just did a cheap, free, easy AWS account, or is this on the school account?
I have a custom
Okay.
AWS account where I just
Oh,
have
that's right. That's right. Yeah, we talked about that. So Joshua's paying out of pocket. Like, I don't know, AWS is pretty cheap. So especially like for this. So sweet. So that's a functional, non-functional. We talked about usability. We just went through, you saw me. This is actually my first time accessing and going through all of these features. So had not done anything. There's no training required, so it was super easy. It's the calendar makes sense. It's like all of the other calendars that we see on websites and things like that. So easy to go through. So usability was there, accessibility. I think where it's hosted now, that's a longer term thing because people spend up to a year trying to figure out how to get it accessible on through government firewalls and things like that. And so obviously right now with it just being, not a full URL that's not registered with no certificates or anything like that. It's, it probably won't get through a firewall, but right now, not a big deal. You can go hit it right here and it's fine. Reliability. So we talked about this really early on, and it was like customization and can we do more like, potentially role based, or can we do, customization so that if I want to pick something specific to my calendar, but at the same time, we also want to preserve the ability to remain anonymous, right? And not have to have another login or password or thing like that. And so I think the approach that we took as far as it being kind of like more secure and safe and not, gathering data from me. I don't think you guys have any cookies in here. Nothing popped up that said, hey, cookies are in here. And I don't see anything popping up in the top there that shows that there's cookies. So yeah, so I think like super easy, right? So very anonymous. It allows me to then push it to wherever I want through that Outlook feature. So I like that piece. Performance, hard to tell here, right? Because the scraping is really what we're talking about in the background. So why don't you guys talk just a little bit about how often the scraping happens or is projected to happen?
Of course. So for the goals on the scraping end, the goal is to set up a script that'll run it once a day, basically. So at
Yep.
around midnight every day, it'll scrape all the websites and then compile that. Currently, we use a JSON folder, rebuild the website, and basically rehost it. The whole process currently takes less than a minute. Of course, adding more web scrapers is going to increase the amount of time that it'll take, but I don't think it'll take more than a few minutes. So at worst, we'll have a few minutes of downtime at around midnight every day.
Okay. Good. Okay. Yeah. So really, I'm not going to be up at midnight looking at calendars. So that's perfectly fine there. Implementation, it is fully online. Eventually having the ability to access it, through the DoD's firewalls. And we talked about that. That's just, I think, still probably a little bit out of scope for what we're talking about here. And then integration. Yeah, so simple to set up and link accounts through the program. And we talked about that, right? And that was more kind of on the safety security and not necessarily having to do that. And we did go away from having the ability to log in to kind of keep my preferences. From my feedback on that, there's really no preference that I probably wouldn't quickly be able to access anyway. So having the anonymity, being anonymous is actually, I think, easier to manage in this specific case. So yeah. And I think that was it. So I mean, like, looking at the requirements that we set out initially and agreed to, and what you guys delivered on, I think, I have no feedback other than, kind of what we talked about. So yeah, looks good.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I'll stop sharing unless there's anything else you guys want me to demo while I have it open. I think we hit all of the features, right?
Yeah, we could go into test cases, but that's more on our end than your end.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't look at this view. Okay. All right. So just another way to kind of look at how things unfold. All right. So yeah, cool. Yeah. Well, why don't you talk through the test cases then? Because I think that was important. We talked about that, right? And I think that's the maintainability. So if we go into kind of those non-functional requirements, talk about like why you did it, other than because I told you to, because we agree. It was more of a conversation and talked about it, and it was something that you guys ended up implementing. So yeah, talk about the testing that you did.
So I did most of the test work for the front end. So I can actually share my screen now. And I believe I have it pulled up somewhere. Let me quickly share my screen, and it is this one. Cool. So for the front end test cases, we wanted to test to make sure that everything loads correctly, renders correctly, appears as it should be. So I believe if I just do npm run test here, it'll pull out the test cases, and you see we're using jest for our test cases with specific settings for TypeScript. You can see it loading all the events when it's rendering. It takes a little while if you don't run it, but yeah, we have 5 test cases currently, describing all the test cases here. So confirm that jest is set up, confirm that the page renders, make sure that all the columns are there, make sure all the description is there, make sure it's hidden. Of course, there's room for more test cases. For example, showing that the calendar is there, showing the left columns are there, showing all the events are rendered correctly, things like that. Can all be added, but the format and the like skeleton of it is there, and a lot of the test cases are there. So we have decently good coverage, not as much as we want, but a solid amount of coverage so far. And then Joseph,
And we didn't go into like, there was no set limit. There wasn't like testing wasn't even, specifically called out in the requirements. But so why did you guys, like, what is the value then of the testing? Like, did you find anything as you were developing where you, like, maybe a test broke when you were writing code and then you went back and kind of looked at why did I break the test? Did any of that happen?
Yeah, I remember specifically when I was messing around in the JSON or in the front end, and then I think Josh was doing stuff in the back end when we added new variables. Not all the stuff was updated to take those stuff, so the test would throw a big error when we tried to push.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a trick to figure out.
Well, good, but yeah, so you didn't merge in breaking code, right? And so I think that was, that's a good lesson learned, and why, one of the valuable aspects of doing the testing. So sweet.
I think expanding on that, we also did a what is it called? The GitHub workflow. I don't know how much of that you'd take versus how if you already have a system in place, but I can quickly grab that as well for the screen share. Oh, shoot, this is the wrong code. period. There it is. So you can see, I think Randall can elaborate on the middleware and the Docker stuff that goes into this, but this is where our code gets run. And then on the web scraper end, there's some tests specifically for the web scrapers. And these are specifically to test, one, make sure the web scraper is working correctly, like checking the correct fields, and if the right stuff's being passed around, like dictionaries are in the right format. And then I believe we also have a couple to make sure stuff like ensign, the HTML is still somewhat the same, or that we can still access their HTML correctly.
Yeah.
So if any website, I think there was one that had really messed up HTML tables that Josh was working on. If that ever updates from that to a nicer one, then it might be hard for us to find those events. Or if ensign ever downgrades to worse events, then, or a worse format, then we'll be able to figure that out and throw you a notification that that's broken at least.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. And Randall, if you want to talk more about the middleware and the workflow that you set up.
Yeah. So what I set up was the sorry, my screen flashed for a sec. I set up the Docker image continuous integration workflow in GitHub. It's designed specifically to work with Docker images, which I had some experience with. And the idea is that we would not only be able to test our code prior to publishing it to main or prior to merging it, but we'd also be able to then keep an archive of all those working products. So let's say we do merge it and there is an issue, we have that previous image to roll back to, or if we find later on, say 3 months or a year down the road, oh, like this actually here hasn't been working, we can roll back to points. And with the Docker image continuous integration script, what it does is it will go through and it'll run, and we have the structure for those test cases that we're able to plug in additional test cases, and it will run through that script. It'll run through the tests, and you're able to set a certain percentage of tests that must pass in order for it to be merged with main. So we're able to modify that as we add in more test cases. But additionally, we're also able to see the results of each and every single build, because it builds a Docker image of the application, which is another thing that we had previously set up, was the ability to build that Docker image. So that way, as it does, we can see the output and we can archive, or we can see the output of those results in GitHub at any point in time. So we can see if there was, oh, it didn't just not build, it failed on this line here. So that really improves the maintainability of the product, I think, is what a lot of that middleware does.
Nice. Yeah. So build pipelines, very important. So how does that set up? So as you guys merge, so when does it run? Does it run when you merge into master? Is it set up to do that?
Yes.
Nice. Okay. Sweet. Yeah. So continuous delivery. Perfect.
Is there anything we want to cover for this demo? I think that's it from my end that I wanted to cover.
I think that's everything for me as well.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah. No, so just, I mean, if we're ready to close, I have some closing comments for you guys, unless anything else.
Yeah.
No. One, super appreciate you guys participating in this. Is one of the things that I think is important is one, us being able to connect, from like the DoD perspective back into our academia. And hopefully you guys got a little bit, deeper involved with understanding Air National Guard and Air Force and things like that. So that was one of the goals of this program for me. The other one obviously was to get, started on this bigger, like, how do I view all of the different events out there? And I think you guys got an amazing start on it, right? This is going to be easy to take from here, continue to iterate on, and kind of build out. I think that the framework that you have that you just basically built from scratch is pretty amazing. So, hopefully you guys got, the building part of it, maybe a couple new, programming languages, deeper involvement into test, we got into pipelines. So I think you guys hit a lot of really, awesome different parts of the software development piece, and it was really fun to watch. So I appreciate you guys putting all the effort into this, and I hope you got something out of it. You had fun while you're doing it. So yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.